Let's hear now a little bit more about Transparency International's report with Accountability Now. And Transparency International says most countries are still failing to stop corruption worldwide. And over 80% of the world's population live in countries where it is a problem. In releasing its Corruption Perception Index for 2023, it says countries with a strong rule of law and well-functioning democratic institutions often sit at the top of the index. The top 10 countries include Denmark, Finland, New Zealand and Norway. But South Africa slipped below the global average and ranks 83 out of 180 countries, scoring 41 out of 100 on the index, with 100 meaning not corrupt and 0 meaning highly corrupt. Last year, South Africa ranked 39. Advocate Paul Hoffman is Director of Accountability Now and joins us live for some insights. Advocate Hoffman, as always, thank you very much for being with us tonight. The data is upsetting because South Africa's had the commissions. We've heard the promises to turn things around, yet we are bearing the brunt of corruption on failed institutions, failing infrastructure. How serious are the signs in this ranking?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, Iman, and good evening to your listeners, your viewers. I'm afraid this is not good news for South Africa. We are now, according to the index, slipping into the category of countries that are not fully democratic. The worst score that we ever got on the watch of the previous president, Jacob Zuma, was in 2013 when we were at 43. And now we go down to 41 when he has been succeeded by President Ramaphosa, who comes in on a renewal and clean up corruption ticket, but manages to get South Africa into a position where it is grey listed and where it slips down the Transparency International perception of corruption index.
And then very much to the point of what you're saying, we're worse off under President Cyril Ramaphosa in this regard.
Yes, we've gone backwards. And of course, we were never grey listed when Jacob Zuma was president. And now we have a worse score than the score that pertained his worst score, which was in 2013. So it's not looking good for South Africa. And my colleague at Corruption Watch has correctly pointed out that political interference in the prosecution of seriously corrupt people is a problem in South Africa. We do not have the type of anti-corruption machinery in South Africa which the Constitutional Court has described in binding terms in the Glenister litigation as long ago as 2011. That court finding has never been properly implemented by the South African government, any shape or form. And even the reforms that are currently under contemplation do not comply with those criteria. So we continue to go backwards.
We'll get to what you're proposing in this context, but in the introduction, I talked about Corruption Perception Index, saying that countries that have a strong rule of law and a well-functioning democratic institutions often sit at the top. We often trumpet ourselves, with these same attributes. We say that we do have democratic institutions, that we do have a strong rule of law. Are we deluding ourselves given where we're sitting now?
Yes, I'm afraid that's called governance by sleight of hand, where there's lip service to the values of the Constitution and to the rule of law, which the Constitution actually describes as supreme. It's not happening, and we are now in the category of flawed democracies, according to the TI Corruption Perception Index. And that is something for everybody to worry about, and to be sure that when they vote later this year, that they vote for a party that has genuine reform initiatives in its manifesto, initiatives that can be turned into concrete steps that get us into the position where corruption with impunity does not continue in South Africa.
And I would encourage people watching this interview to go and read the index, because it gives a lot of not only the quantitative data, but also the qualitative data around what is driving the numbers, and some interesting findings on the link between social injustice and corruption, because people who get tenders, often selected without merit over people who do have merit, and how that has a corrosive impact on the psyche of being, business people, being able to get forward, as a normal, ordinary business. We don't have time to discuss all of that here now, but I'm encouraging our viewers to go and have a look. Let's get to what you are therefore calling for, Paul, and this is the establishment of an international anti-corruption court. What would it look like, and what would it be able to do that local governments aren't able to?
Yes, well, the reason, before we get there, all of what you've just described can be turned into three words. Corruption is theft. Theft from the poor, especially the types of corruption you were talking about. But the International Anti-Corruption Court is designed to sidestep the kleptocrats who are taking countries like South Africa down the road to failed statehood through their corrupt activities. An International Anti-Corruption Court will work in much the same way as the International Criminal Court works, but it will have jurisdiction over countries and individuals who engage in corrupt activities, whether at home or transnationally. That court will work on the basis of complementarity, which means that it can only exercise jurisdiction when it is asked to exercise jurisdiction, and the country in which the corruption is occurring is doing nothing about the corruption. So an international anti-corruption court is not only a criminal court, but also the opportunity of raking back the loot which usually gets transferred to some safe haven. Could be a Swiss bank account, or Hong Kong, or Dubai. A lot of properties in London are bought by Russian oligarchs, and that is a primary example of the wealth of one nation being transferred to another in order to hide the proceeds of crime from the criminal justice authorities in the country where the looting is taking place.
And this would be ideal, especially countries where there's transnational illicit flows of money, people are elusive, so many, dummy companies and these kind of like trapdoors that go nowhere can be, fall under the mandate of this court. And what you're saying is even those former havens wouldn't be safe from investigation, if I understood you correctly.
Yes.
What does it take to
correct.
What does it take, Paul, and you can respond to that when you come back with your final answer. What does it take then to set it up when we know how many vested interests are in here that are at risk and threat, the super wealthy, obviously, that will stand in the way of this ever becoming real?
Yes, I think that we need to accept that there will be resistance, but there will also be, especially among countries which are abused as havens, there will be the necessary political will to accept an international anti-corruption court. And if enough of the countries that are havens come on board, then a snowball effect can be expected, and the work of the International Anti-Corruption Court will then be able to stem the tide of international corruption and even corruption at local level. We do not have the type of expertise, the specialists, that an international anti-corruption court could bring to bear on the problems of corruption. In fact, we have very few people in government or in the public service who are able to do the kind of work that is required to effectively counter serious corruption through forensics and the marshalling of great deal of data that is difficult to do manually, but easy to do if you have the necessary expertise.
Advocate Paul Hoffman, the Director of Accountability Now, thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate it.